Call on Mr. Brian, the member for Georgetown Central, to say prayers.
Let us pray. Almighty God, from whom all wisdom and power are derived, we beseech Thee so to direct and prosper the deliberations of the Legislative Assembly now assembled, that all things may be ordered upon the best and surest foundations, for the glory of Thy name and for the safety, honor, and welfare of the people of these islands. Bless our sovereign lady, Queen Elizabeth II, Philip, Duke of Edinburgh, Charles, Prince of Wales, and all the royal family. Give grace to all who exercise authority in our Commonwealth, that peace and happiness, truth and justice, religion and piety may be established among us. Especially we pray for the governor of our islands, the premier, the speaker of the Legislative Assembly, the leader of the opposition, ministers of cabinet, ex officio members, and members of the Legislative Assembly, that we may be enabled faithfully to perform the responsible duties of our high office. All this we ask for the great name's sake. Let us say the Lord's Prayer together. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. The Lord bless us and keep us. The Lord make his face shine upon us, and be gracious unto us. The Lord lift up the light of his countenance upon us, and give us peace now and always. Amen.
Please be seated. This Honorable Legislative Assembly is now in session.
Administration of oath or affirmation. Oath of allegiance and due execution by Ms. Gloria McPhail-Nixon, the Acting Honourable Deputy Governor responsible for the portfolio of the Civil Service, to be the temporary ex officio member of the Legislative Assembly.
Please stand.
Thank you.
I, Mrs. Gloria Michelle McPhail-Nixon, do swear that I will well and truly serve Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, her heirs and successors, and the people of the Cayman Islands in the office of ex officio member of the Legislative Assembly, so help me God. I, Mrs. Gloria Michelle McPhail-Nixon, do swear that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, her heirs and successors according to law, so help me God.
Mrs. McPhail-Nixon, we welcome you again as the Acting Honourable Deputy Governor responsible for the portfolio of the Civil Service, to be the temporary ex officio member of the Legislative Assembly. Please take your seat.
Reading by the Honourable Speaker, messages and announcements.
None.
Presentation of petitions.
None.
Presentation of papers and of reports.
None.
Questions to the Honourable Ministers and members of the Cabinet.
None.
Statements by the Honourable Ministers and members of the Cabinet.
None.
Personal explanations,
None.
obituary, and other ceremonial speeches.
Clerk.
Sir.
Honorable members, a few days ago, in taking note of the passing of prominent people in our community, I failed to mention, to take note, the passing of the late Mr. Ralph O'Neill, who was a former Premier of the British Virgin Islands. Most of us in this house know Mr. O'Neill. I was well associated with him and his work, and at times on many issues I would get his support when I was leading the government on matters to do for the Cayman Islands. And I'd ask us we could stand in a respect of a minute's silence. Thank you. You may be seated.
Raising a matter of privileges.
No.
Government business, bills, continuation of debate on the second reading, appropriation financial years 2020-2021, Bill 2019.
When we took the adjournment on Friday last on the debate of the appropriation financial year 2020 and 2021, Bill 2019, the Honorable Minister of Financial Services and the member for West Bay South was making her contribution. Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, when we broke last Friday, I was talking about some of the innovations and work that was being carried out by the General Registry Department under the auspices of the financial services sector of the ministry. And permit me to speak a bit more about some of the system augmentation that has taken place and will continue to take place over the next 2 years. Mr. Speaker, having the appropriate IT infrastructure and architecture is absolutely critical for the proper functioning of the General Registry. With regard to the systems employed by the department, it has over the years experienced downtimes and slow processing due to old and outdated servers, and I'm sure that many people who have been using General Registry can attest to those experiences. Mr. Speaker, to solve this issue, I am pleased to advise that the Registry has recently acquired 2 new servers which are being housed in secure locations with 3 dedicated internet lines from different ISPs. Mr. Speaker, the two of the lines are redundant and provide redundancy and for the automatic activation should the main ISP line fail. Mr. Speaker, the servers are now in operation after extensive UAT testing and the application of various security layers to ensure the risk of hacking is at a very minimum. And Mr. Speaker, as the Honourable Minister of Commerce made in his contribution to the debate, as he discussed, the risk of cybercrime is real, and this government is taking that risk seriously. And so the adequate cybersecurity measures must be put in place and maintained across the spectrum. And so the General Registry has done and is committed to continuing to do just that. Mr. Speaker, the deployment of the new servers will now afford users increased speed in the uploads and downloads, and more importantly, a reduction in downtime, which was a frequent event in the single ISP line and the old servers. Mr. Speaker, as you will know, the department launched the Cayman Business Portal in November 2017. This is a fulfillment and a tangible manifestation of how this government has invested in making the lives of small business owners easier and more accessible. Mr. Speaker, this portal was developed to allow small businesses in the islands currently managing themselves to conduct its business with the General Registry online. Since the launch of the system, 2,960 companies and 228 NPOs have registered to use the portal. Presently, Mr. Speaker, users of the portal are able to file beneficial ownership information, order good standing certificates, incorporation certificates, and certificates of existence. They can also pay annual fees and file returns with the registry online. Mr. Speaker, persons can also register their NPOs via the Cayman Business Portal, conduct changes of names, and file amended constitutional documents via the portal as well. Mr. Speaker, there are no fees for use of the portal other than a small transaction fee of $1 per transaction for certificates ordered and delivered online. Again, Mr. Speaker, this is another tangible way in which my ministry and this government assists small businesses by increasing efficiency, by facilitating online access to General Registry service, and minimizing cost. Looking ahead, Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to report that a number of new initiatives of the General Registry are already underway. As the legislative amendments made earlier this year to the Companies Law and Limited Liabilities Companies Law, the Department introduced inspection by applicants of the registers of directors and, where applicable, alternate directors for exempted, ordinary, and non-resident companies. Mr. Speaker, a list of current managers for limited liability companies is also made available for inspection by applicants. The inspections are carried out at the registry office in the Government Administration Building, and I have been informed that to date the department has responded to 73 inspection requests for these registers. Mr. Speaker, this initiative is a positive response taken to address a recommendation made in the most recent review of Cayman's anti-money laundering and countering terrorism financing regime by the CFATF. In addition, Mr. Speaker, General Registry has contracted to build a modern births, deaths, and marriages system registry. I am pleased to report the first two modules, the births and deaths registry, are in the final stages of development. These modules will shortly be deployed for the user acceptance testing. Once the testing is completed and the bugs are fixed during the testing phase, and the system is completed, Mr. Speaker, local hospitals will be able to submit births and deaths notifications electronically to the General Registry. Mr. Speaker, this feature will speed up the registration process of births, as well as the time in registering and issuing certificates. Mr. Speaker, before I leave the subject of financial services, I want to briefly address a point raised by the Leader of the Opposition in his debate regarding the issue of foreclosures. Mr. Speaker, in his true cavalier form, the Leader of the Opposition has accused the government of doing nothing about the issue of mortgage legislation since taking office. In fact, Mr. Speaker, it is quite the opposite. For the first time, as a result of my request as Minister of Financial Services and this government's willingness to consider the issue in a fulsome way, the Law Reform Commission has been asked to consider the legislative framework governing what is commonly referred to as mortgages, conduct the necessary research, and to present a proposal of legislative enhancement for government's consideration. Mr. Speaker, I have been advised by the Attorney General that this process is still underway, as the Law Reform Commission has published its report and is considering the feedback received on the report. Now, Mr. Speaker, I'm not sure why that information has surprised and seems to surprise some people in this chamber, but I have made a statement about this from the very beginning in my first budget debate in 2018-2019, where I said the government would be doing just that. I also gave an update to this Honourable House in November of last year about what is happening, and I once again, for at least the third time, am informing the leader, as well as any other member in this government who didn't hear the first 2 times around, and anybody in the listening public who may be concerned about what the government is doing to try to address this issue. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, we are still waiting to receive the proposals from the Law Reform Commission, as no proposal has been forthcoming to date, but I understand that they are working on it, and as I have said on numerous occasions, the opposition may have the luxury of making statements. Some may consider them reckless statements and feel-good promises, devoid of facts or reality. But, Mr. Speaker, this government is not in the habit of taking cavalier or reckless decisions, especially in the area as complex as this one. Mr. Speaker, as promised in my debate of the 2018-2019 budget, the government has, in fact, carried out our promise to enlist the Law Reform Commission to conduct the legislative research necessary to better inform the government of the various pieces of legislation that currently exist that governs mortgages. And Mr. Speaker, again, I will reiterate, this is not one piece of legislation for our country. We have registered land law, we have a number of other pieces of legislation that cuts across multiple ministries, and therefore it is necessary for the Law Reform Commission to conduct the thorough analysis that they are doing, but we are saying that we are hoping that any proposed enhancements or possible new legislation to address the concerns raised by members of the public will be presented for government's consideration. Mr. Speaker, I think it's also important to note that the actual number and rate of foreclosures has been on a steady decline since the first quarter of 2017. But, Mr. Speaker, we are not being complacent because of the fact that the foreclosure numbers are going down. We know life and the economy is cyclical, so there may be an upturn later on. But this government is prepared to consider any changes that may be necessary once we are presented with the facts and with the legislative proposals thereof. So, Mr. Speaker, despite the constant cry by some of the members of the opposition for government to do something about foreclosures, because, let's face it, Mr. Speaker, that cry sounds good for the opposition to make. It resonates. I once again remind members of this honorable House of the competing interests between mortgager and mortgagee, as I have discussed on a number of occasions. Mr. Speaker, a legislative fix is not something that can or should be rushed into, because we all know about the law of unintended consequences. But, Mr. Speaker, the government has been, and we are still looking forward to receiving the final report of the Law Reform Commission with its recommendations attached thereto for consideration. And I would urge the Honourable Attorney General that he will continue to work with the Commission to ensure that that process happens as expeditiously as possible. Mr. Speaker, to summarize the thrust and purpose of the many initiatives of the various legislative departments that fall within the financial services purview, my policy priorities and that of the government was to A, initiate where necessary and continue to provide a proactive local and international engagement strategy, reaching a wide range of audiences to communicate who we are, what we do, and how we are regulated, and B, ensure timely responses and actions are taken to address the various international initiatives and assessments affecting Cayman as a global financial center, so that we can continue to be market leaders as we adapt to change and respond to the changing global regulatory and geopolitical environment. Mr. Speaker, because in the world of financial services, to borrow a phrase from our Jamaican neighbors, the Cayman Islands is small but with talawa. And, Mr. Speaker, we intend to stay that way. Mr. Speaker, I will now turn my remarks to Home Affairs, beginning with that of Hazard Management, Cayman Islands. Mr. Speaker, the Hazard Management Department of the Cayman Islands has overall responsibility for the National Comprehensive Disaster Management Program, including preparedness, response, mitigation, and recovery. HMCI is responsible for the National Emergency Operations Center, which is activated to direct and coordinate the response to national threats. HMCI also has responsibility for maintaining the national hazard management plans for threats such as hurricanes and earthquakes. In carrying out its responsibilities, HMCI looked to engage and enlist members of the community in their communities, other government departments, and private and non-governmental organizations such as the Cayman Islands Red Cross. Mr. Speaker, HMCI and the Disaster Preparedness and Hazard Management Law 2016 is the key coordinating mechanism and provides the legal framework for the country to be able to prepare, respond, mitigate, and recover from natural or other disasters. Mr. Speaker, as I'm sure you are aware and will agree, the Cayman Islands Community Emergency Response Team, or CERT program, is regarded as a critical mechanism for strengthening both national and community resilience. There have been a number of CERT teams established throughout the islands, Mr. Speaker. These include teams in West Bay, North Sound Gardens, Prospect, Cayman Brac, North Side, Windsor Park, and Savannah Meadows. In 2019, Savannah Meadows became the latest community to establish a community response team. A total of 10 volunteers completed 26 hours of training provided by Hazard Management Cayman Islands and the Cayman Islands Red Cross over a 5-week period. Mr. Speaker, the training topics on search and rescue, vulnerability and capacity assessment, damage assessment, and fire safety. Monthly training sessions were also held for current CERTs to ensure sustainability. Mr. Speaker, going forward, HMCI plans to continue growing the program by establishing 2 new CERTs each year, as well as providing opportunities for continued engagement and learning for existing teams through monthly training sessions in partnership with the Cayman Islands Red Cross. They will kick off 2020 with training for Lil Cayman CERT. Mr. Speaker, planning is also underway for the 2-day disaster challenge in 2020 with all CERT teams to ensure all volunteers who serve their community in this capacity have adequate ongoing practical disaster response experience. And I would like to take this opportunity, Mr. Speaker, to thank all of those volunteers who have made themselves available to serve their community in the time of need should a disaster strike, who participate as members of the CERT team, and encourage those who may be interested to certainly get in touch with HMCI in this regard. Mr. Speaker, members of this Honourable House will agree that over the years, the way that residents consume information has changed dramatically, and it continues to change. Mr. Speaker, as such, HMCI is endeavouring to keep pace with the rapid changes in media consumption to ensure that the vital public safety messages reach all residents. To do that, HMCI will establish new vehicles to get information out, including utilizing YouTube and Instagram, and by increasing the use of video and WhatsApp groups. HMCI will continue in 2020 and beyond to post dynamic, timely, and engaging content. Mr. Speaker, the government recognizes that a well-trained urban search and rescue team is a vital asset, especially following a damaging earthquake, major fire, or hurricane where buildings have collapsed or been damaged in order to provide appropriate post-impact response. As such, planning has already started with the HMCI and the Cayman Islands Fire Service to identify a core group of officers who will undertake this training. And HMCI will continue this work to develop the team and provide continued training and exercises to ensure that it is sustainable, effective, and ready to be deployed in response to a wide range of post-impact scenarios. In April, Mr. Speaker, HMCI hosted a mass casualty training and mass casualty instructor training, which was co-facilitated by a representative of the Pan American Health Organization, or PAHO for short. This intensive week-long training concluded with an overnight exercise where police, fire, medics, and other responders worked together on a range of scenarios that included a stadium collapse, a gang fight involving multiple victims, a large transportation accident, and hazardous material spills. The instructor training offered during that same time provided an additional week of training for those persons undertaking that training. A second mass casualty management training was initially scheduled for Cayman Brac, Mr. Speaker, in November, but this has been rescheduled for the first quarter of 2020. Mr. Speaker, a 3-day strategic incident command training hosted by HMCI in September was attended by senior managers from a range of first response agencies, including the Royal Cayman Islands Police Service, Cayman Islands Fire Service, the Department of Environmental Health, the Department of Environment, and others. The Strategic Incident Command training is a system designed to be used or applied from the time an incident occurs until the requirement for management and operations no longer exist. Mr. Speaker, this training can be used to cope with incidents of any kind or complexity. And again, Mr. Speaker, in the 2020-2021 years, HMCI will continue to offer this mass casualty course and incident command course for first responders. The breadth and range of the various training exercises will be increased to include large-scale evacuation drills, as well as hazardous materials and oil spill response exercises. There is also discussion about the exercise involving cruise lines as it is recognized that this is a critical area to plan for. So again, Mr. Speaker, in some instances, these emergencies, these disasters, these hazards happen with very little notice, but HMCI and by extension all of the first responders who heed the call are getting properly and adequately prepared to deal in the event that such an incident were to occur. Mr. Speaker, ensuring that the National Emergency Operations Centre is ready to activate at all times will continue to be a priority for HMCI in 2020 and 2021, as it has been every year. Mr. Speaker, I'm sure that you and honourable members of this House will agree that getting the proper support mentally, the mental health that could be impacted by persons after experiencing such a disaster can be as, if not more, damaging than any physical infrastructure damage sustained. Mr. Speaker, people who experience traumatic events may not know what support mechanisms are available, and there is often a stigma attached for asking for assistance. And so therefore, I am pleased to report that this year and the next, HMCI is looking at viable options to strengthen capacity in this area to support persons who need assistance. And in 2020, HMCI will continue to work with mental health professionals and partner agencies to ensure that new mental health interventions and support services, such as mapping of quiet rooms in all shelters, are available in emergency shelters and the NEOC following traumatic incidents. Appropriate support, Mr. Speaker, in this area has been shown to be effective at speeding up the medium to long-term recovery process. Mr. Speaker, the ability for people to be warned of imminent danger, particularly in the events of emergencies that occur outside of normal hours, is critical. And in 2018, with collaboration with the Department of Public Safety and Communications, there was the commencement of the Phase 1 of the National Emergency Notification System, an integrated and versatile radio interrupt system solution to support emergency alerts. Mr. Speaker, in 2019, this radio erupt technology was completed and went live. A system of monthly checks of the existing radio interrupt will commence in 2020 to ensure the public are aware of these alerts and that they are reliable should the need arise. Mr. Speaker, in 2020 and 2021, HMCI, in partnership with the Department of Public Safety Communications, will focus on the full implementation, including training of the system users and public testing of Phase 2 of the National Emergency Notification System. The implementation, Mr. Speaker, of a comprehensive mobile strategy for emergency notification via a mobile alert app. Mr. Speaker, the mobile alert app will provide enhanced real-time location-specific alerts designed to keep the Cayman Islands residents and visitors informed and safe. Public safety officials will be able to initiate notification via the mobile applications. A mobile-friendly registration process will allow the Cayman Islands residents and visitors to download the app freely in a simple and fast way to register for emergency alerts. Mr. Speaker, in addition to the app, and with respect to the continued implementation of this process, HMCI and BPSC will continue to advance to the next stages with the ultimate goal of being able to include cell broadcast alerts, which would enable government to rapidly send emergency messages directly to all cell phones within the range of communication towers across the Cayman Islands. A system, Mr. Speaker, which is similar to the Amber Alert system in the United States. Of course, the work of the ICTA will be absolutely crucial in assisting to move this project along, and we encourage that that collaboration continues. And so, Mr. Speaker, the plan is eventually to have the technology in place to allow for emergency alerts to be sent remotely from a single platform. Mr. Speaker, in 2019, amendments were made to the Disaster Preparedness and Hazard Management Law to formally establish the National Disaster Fund, which existed previously but was not protected by any legislative framework. Each year, funds from the general revenue and the surplus of HMCI's budget is added to this fund, and provided that we are not impacted, the money will continue to grow and be available if required to fund relief operations in the aftermath of a disaster. Mr. Speaker, throughout 2019, HMCI has developed a situational dashboard that integrates real-time information locally, regionally, and globally, which will serve as a vital decision-making tool for the National Emergency Operations Center. In 2020, HMCI will continue to increase its capability by providing identification of flood-prone areas, both current and historical, communities affected, critical infrastructure impacted, and nearest shelters during and in the aftermath of a large-scale emergency. Mr. Speaker, in 2020, the HMCI also intends to increase its focus on older persons. Throughout 2019, HMCI has been working with the Department of Children and Family Services to significantly increase outreach efforts and to provide additional interventions and support for elderly persons in the Cayman Islands. Those elderly persons who are frail and who have been identified as a particularly vulnerable subgroup in the aftermath of disasters, and HMCI has embarked on a program of providing presentations at care homes and residential facilities, and also meeting directly with the elderly in the district community groups. Mr. Speaker, HMCI is also encouraging CERT teams to offer greater awareness and support to the frail elderly and persons with disabilities in their communities, and medic alert kits are being distributed to seniors so vital family contact information and medical details can be quickly retrieved by responding ambulance crews, therefore speeding up response in an emergency situation. Mr. Speaker, I will now continue with the focus on the Department of Public Safety and Communication. Members of this Honourable House have been looking forward to further developments with the National CCTV program and more details on the various expansions and upgrades to the program. Mr. Speaker, between January and September 2019, there have been 235 requests for recorded images from the National CCTV program. The RCIPS have been the main requester, with 90% of the requests for CCTV images associated with active investigations. During the same period for 2018, there were 268 requests for recorded images from the National CCTV program. Mr. Speaker, the RCIPS and Her Majesty's Prison Northward continue to be the main requesters of images from the National CCTV system. New users such as Off-Reg Fuel Inspector have also resulted in investigations and have resulted in an offender being fined for offences. Mr. Speaker, the DPSC has recently visited Cayman Brac in support of the expansion of the National CCTV program into Cayman Brac and Little Cayman. During this visit, the team identified and defined a number of priority locations for CCTV camera installations and locations based on an expressed public safety concerns by the district administration and the RCIPS. Having a better understanding of the nature of the locations and close proximities to the coastline and seashore, the Department of Safety Communications has sourced weather-fortified and appropriate camera enclosures for the 2 locations identified. These enclosures are expected to be delivered in Cayman Brac by next month. The locations are now being prepared for power supply and network connectivity to deliver the video data back to Grand Cayman, thereby linking it to the national CCTV system. Mr. Speaker, full installation is expected to be completed by the end of 2019. Mr. Speaker, the DPSC has also implemented the extension of the fiber optic cable infrastructure that services the eastern districts. This extension will enable the installation of 4 key camera locations to support the national security and public safety. These 4 locations are currently undergoing installation, and it is expected that the upgrade will be completed by the end of November 2019. Mr. Speaker, I am further pleased to report that the Ministry of Financial Services and Home Affairs has concluded the procurement process for the planned upgrade of the national CCTV system head-end hardware and software. Mr. Speaker, these upgrades to the national CCTV program demonstrate the government's ongoing commitment to the strengthening of critical national security and public safety operations. Mr. Speaker, the DPSC has engaged in negotiations surrounding this relatively complex contract to secure a future-proof solution with a goal to obtain value for money. The CCTV administrator expects the upgrade to be completed by the end of 2019. In addition to the national CCTV system head-end hardware upgrade, I have been informed that the national CCTV program has upgraded 86% of the remaining older and poor quality image producing cameras in the national CCTV system. Mr. Speaker, this equates to 43 of the 50 new cameras projected for upgrade in 2019. All key camera locations have been replaced as a priority to support DPSC's public safety partners using the system. Mr. Speaker, from this brief update on the national CCTV activities, it should be clear that the DPSC continues to make great strides in delivering on the government's public safety objectives. In 2020, 2021 and beyond, the DPSC plans to increase the integration of third-party CCTV systems into its video management system, similar to the arrangement with Her Majesty's Prison Northward. Mr. Speaker, in 2020 and 2021, the DPSC will engage in further consultation with all national security and public safety partners to determine new strategic camera operations to inform its plans for further expansion of the national CCTV program in Cayman Brac. Mr. Speaker, the National Public Safety Communication Radio System, its infrastructure and accompanying accessories have been successfully upgraded across 3 islands. This marks the achievement of the critical goal of enhanced capability and interoperability for all first responder agencies. Members will be aware and will agree that reliable communication is crucial for effective public safety operations and for the safety of our first responders and those they serve. Mr. Speaker, this government remains committed to the implementation of state-of-the-art technological services in the Cayman Islands, and we will continue to support our agencies and to deliver the highest standard of service. The installation of the 3 new radio repeater sites, including the 1 site in West Bay South, has significantly improved the radio communications coverage across the islands. Mr. Speaker, the radio public safety system is fully operational as promised, and the DPSC has assigned new radios to the majority of users on the system and upgraded the software on existing radio units to enable them to function on the system. Mr. Speaker, the DPSC has also provided advice and guidance to a number of radio system stakeholders in support of their acquisition of additional interfacing hardware and the management of airtime on the radio system. Mr. Speaker, alternative sentencing arrangements for offenders continues to be a priority for all of the public safety partners and users of the electronic monitoring program. The demand for utilization of the electronic monitoring program continues to grow as more agencies such as the Customs and Border Control, the Judicial Administration, the Conditional Release Board, and the Prison Service seek to increase their use of wearable electronic monitoring devices. Mr. Speaker, the DPSC successfully utilized the funding provided in the current 2018-2019 budget cycle to expand the program in an effort to meet these express demands by these other departments. Specifically, Mr. Speaker, the investment by the government doubled the number of wearable electronic monitoring devices available for user groups such as the CBC and the Judicial Administration, which, Mr. Speaker, has a direct positive impact on offender management. In 2020-2021, Mr. Speaker, the DPSC plans to further discuss and consider all opportunities to expand its electronic monitoring service to support elderly persons in the community. Mr. Speaker, one of the government's 8 strategic broad outcomes is the building of stronger communities and support for the most vulnerable. Mr. Speaker, a project is being undertaken by the Department of Public Safety Communications in the enhancement of services provided by the Electronic Monitoring Center to address difficulties and challenges that are often experienced by older persons at the time when they're facing health issues, security concerns, and other circumstances that would warrant a quick response or external help via 911. Mr. Speaker, a similar type, not the identical type that we have now with respect to offender management, but a more appropriate type of electronic monitoring technology has been able and used to help emergency responders treat those who cannot speak for themselves effectively and older persons with chronic illness. Mr. Speaker, the DPSC is currently in discussion with the Older Persons Council of the Cayman Islands on opportunities to use its GPS tracking and other innovative technology service to support older persons in the community. Mr. Speaker, the goal is to leverage the potential benefits of the GPS tracking devices and other unobtrusive in-home sensing technologies to maintain the health and independence of many of our older yet vulnerable adults. Some of the main features include an emergency hotline and family notifications that, when combined, are an effective way to identifying persons who are in distress or who are lost, and helps to bring family back together in those instances. For example, Mr. Speaker, we often hear times where loved ones who experience Alzheimer's or dementia may simply wander off or lose their way. Technology such as this would be of great assistance in the event of such experiences, Mr. Speaker. And the DPSC looks forward to introducing this technology during the 2020-2021 period to provide peace of mind to caregivers and families who are keen to prevent any danger befalling their senior loved ones. Mr. Speaker, the government committed significant funding in the current 2018-2019 budget cycle to the implementation of the state-of-the-art next-generation 911 technology in the Cayman Islands, and I am pleased to report that the DPSC has utilized this funding to undertake critical upgrades to the 911 emergency communication system, which were completed recently. Again, Mr. Speaker, this marks the achievement of another critical goal of enhanced capability and interoperability for all emergency services and first responders. And I can assure the people of the Cayman Islands that the government will continue to support our agencies to deliver the highest quality of service. It is now therefore timely, Mr. Speaker, that I turn my comments to the Cayman Islands Fire Service. As this Honourable House will be fully aware, the Cayman Islands Fire Service provides 24-hour, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, 911 emergency fire and rescue domestic operational response across Grand Cayman, Cayman Brac, and Little Cayman. As a requirement of the Civil Aviation Authority airport certification, and in partnership with the Cayman Islands Airport Authority, the Fire Service also provides airport fire and rescue service operational cover for Owen Roberts International Airport, Charles Kirkconnell, and Edward Bawden airports. 2019, Mr. Speaker, has been so far a relatively busy year and has seen the Cayman Islands Fire Service attend to 1,539 domestic incidents, which I will break down for the House as follows. 129 property, structure, utility, or vehicle fires, 212 secondary wild waste or landfill fires, 692 automatic false alarms or system test activations or smoke investigations, 25 road traffic collisions, 10 water-related rescues, flooding, boat, or EMS events, 295 emergency medical responses, 176 special service call to assist police or help people either locked in or out, or elevator lock-in, or oil spills. On a positive note, Mr. Speaker, the Cayman Islands Fire Service has not seen any fire-related deaths in the year 2019 so far. Mr. Speaker, the Aviation Department has attended 5 emergencies at the Cayman Islands airports, categorized as follows: 2 aircraft accidents, 3 full emergencies, 2 local standbys. In their supporting role, the Aviation Department has carried out 38 lift assists with emergency medical service and 400 refueling standbys. Mr. Speaker, as I know you will agree, the Cayman Islands Fire Service has proved over the years to be a valued partner with the Cayman Islands Airport Authority. And during this budget cycle, their working relationship has been enhanced through the execution of an updated service level agreement, which was signed on October 2018 and provides an excellent framework to support further areas of joint work going forward. Mr. Speaker, providing standby airport fire service rescue services for refueling aircrafts, assists with foreign object management, conducting fire prevention and inspection activities within the airport boundaries, as well as aiding with training and other agencies, are all examples of work that has been developed collaboratively throughout the year. Mr. Speaker, early discussions with the Cayman Islands Aviation Authority has taken place regarding the delivery of a new state-of-the-art training facility at Owen Roberts Airport to replace the existing facility, which will not be viable when runway and taxi extensions are complete. Mr. Speaker, on the basis that prevention is better than cure, the domestic operational crews have carried out and hosted 40 visits thus far from schools or youth groups during 2019. These visits have a fire prevention and road safety focus, but also aim to encourage interest in the Cayman Islands Fire Service to help support the next generation of firefighters. Early discussions have taken place with the Royal Cayman Islands Police Service and the National Roads Authority to have joint targeted road safety campaigns in the lead up to the Christmas 2019 based on the 4 E's principle: education, engagement, engineering, and enforcement. The main prevention message centers on do not be a victim of the fatal 4, which are speeding, distracted driving, driving under the influence of alcohol or drugs, or not wearing seat belts. In this light, Mr. Speaker, the Chief Fire Officer spoke at the NRA Road Safety Conference recently held and chose to focus on the Cayman Islands Think Road User Safety, which is a holistic multi-agency approach to reduce the numbers of people killed or seriously injured on our roads. Mr. Speaker, in terms of commercial fire and public safety, the small team of fire inspectors at the Cayman Islands Fire Service have had a busy year, which I will summarize for the House as follows: 3,173 fire safety inspections, 161 plan reviews, 326 enforcement actions, 57 fire investigations of their cause and origin, and 33 public fire safety and education events. Mr. Speaker, with the ambitious growth and development plans across the Cayman Islands, a concerted effort to put arrangements in place to ensure consistency of standards through the design, build, and occupation phases of building life are underway. Operational crews have also supported, Mr. Speaker, a number of charitable fundraising events throughout the year, contributing in excess of 3,000 Cayman Islands dollars to worthwhile causes and promoting the fire service as a caring and professional service to residents, businesses, and visitors to the islands alike. And Mr. Speaker, I would like to pause at this moment to personally thank the members of the Cayman Islands Fire Service who faithfully, year after year, since inception in January 1st, 2014, who have attended and continue to attend the Old Time New Year Family Fun Day event that I host in the District of West Bay. On an annual basis, the fire officers on duty come out, they display the truck, but not only that, they see that sometimes the crowd are number sometimes well over 1,000 people, and so they're willing to go in, roll up their sleeves, and help out where they can to make the day a success. And I would particularly like to mention the Fire Safety Inspector, Darnley Chad Scott, who year after year never fails, whether he's on duty or not, he will come out and volunteer as one of the barbecue chefs at the event, catering, as I said, to hundreds and hundreds of people, and to ensure that there is certainly fire safety considerations at the grill. Mr. Speaker, I am pleased to report that the vital procurement of new state-of-the-art fire engines has been completed, with 3 airport crash foam tenders, 3 water tanker appliances, 4 rapid intervention vehicles, and 3 trailer pumps currently in build and due to be delivered in 2020. Mr. Speaker, our aging fleet of vehicles desperately needed a replacement program, and this significant capital investment by the government demonstrates our commitment to public safety and the valuable, essential role that our Cayman Islands Fire Service officers deliver in our public safety network. Mr. Speaker, new road rescue extrication equipment and breathing apparatus sets have also been procured, purchased, and recently delivered to the Fire Service, with the familiarization training planned for all operational crews over the next 3 months. Mr. Speaker, all 5 fire stations have undergone the first phases of refurbishment, with further renovations planned for the rest of the year and forward into 2020-2021. Mr. Speaker, there have been many legacy issues that this government has committed to tackle and have successfully managed to address, some of them being things that may be considered as basic as the bay doors at the the fire services, which, as you know, is very critical to the operation of trucks getting in and out in a very efficient manner. That is an example of some of the renovations that have been addressed and will continue to be addressed in 2020 and 2021. It is to the credit of all the managers that have stepped up to undertake the new and challenging roles that significant steps have been made on the start of a longer-term improvement journey to deliver an efficient, effective, professional fire and rescue service to residents, businesses, and visitors to the Cayman Islands. Mr. Speaker, the aim of the government's continued revenue and capital investment in this vital 911 emergency service is to see a modern, fit-for-purpose, professional fire and rescue service that demonstrates effective and efficient ways of working. Mr. Speaker, as we heard when I discussed hazard management, and given the recent events that we have all witnessed and assisted in our own way to what happened to the Bahamas, and also before that BVI and our sister territory of Anguilla, given those events, and of course our own experiences in Hurricane Ivan, which may seem like way back when, and the evidence-based risk during hurricane season, effective hurricane preparedness through response and recovery phases is essential. And as I indicated earlier, the Cayman Islands Fire Service has certainly stepped up to participate in the urban search and rescue equipment, training, and teams which would be required and which are being pursued for that training in the event of any such disasters that may befall us in the coming years. The fire service will ensure that the staff are trained and competent to support strategies for road safety, and water rescue to reduce the risk of the public, to ensure that all staff deployed are well equipped to save lives. And again, Mr. Speaker, the partnership with HMCI has started and will continue into the new year. Mr. Speaker, my remarks that will follow will focus on some of the success and achievements of Her Majesty's Cayman Islands Prison Service and plans for the next budget cycle. Mr. Speaker, Her Majesty's Cayman Islands Prison Service has had a very successful 2019 with significant progress being made both in terms of capital projects and operational delivery. Honourable members may recall that in recognition of the many critical infrastructure needs at Her Majesty's Northward Prison and Her Majesty's Fairbanks Prison, a capital budget of $2.4 million was allocated for 2019. Additionally, the operating budget was $16 million. Mr. Speaker, the Director of Prisons has worked tirelessly and collaboratively to utilize the substantial funding support provided by the government to improve the nature and condition of the existing prison estate. It is important to note, Mr. Speaker, that many of the positive results that are derived from the significant improvements to the internal environment and to the rehabilitation of offenders are shared. The Ministry and the HMCIPS are making significant headway in the journey to confirm the prison, Cayman Islands Prison, as a regional leader in the provision of correctional services. Mr. Speaker, it is my pleasure to report to this Honourable House that the Cayman Islands Prison Service, through the dedicated work of its employees, ongoing support from the Ministry, and the willingness of a wide range of stakeholders to collaborate, has delivered on an impressive range of outputs that align with this government's stated broad outcomes as set out in the strategic policy statement. Mr. Speaker, speaking specifically with respect to some of the rehabilitative services, with regard to the delivery of rehabilitative services, the prison service aims to support the personal and social development of prisoners with the ultimate aim of reducing crime and the fear of crime whilst contributing towards the building of safer, stronger, and more cohesive communities. This is in direct alignment with two of the government's identified broad outcomes, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, despite a challenging operating environment, prison staff and their community partners have delivered a number of notable developments during 2019, which include but are not limited to the following. The Enhanced Reintegration Unit was created by converting an unused section of the Immigration Detention Centre to provide spaces for up to 21 low-risk prisoners who are engaged with community placements as part of their release plans. This facility was created using prisoner labour and was financed from existing maintenance and capital budgets. 20 prisoners have so far resided at the Enhanced Reintegration Unit, with each being exposed to a number of community placements and home leave schemes. Mr. Speaker, I am made to understand that the positive impact that the opening of the Enhanced Reintegration Unit has had on the engagement of the prisoners at Her Majesty's Prison Northward has been and is significant. During 2019, the Prison Service also worked in collaboration with the SRIU to implement the Independent Monitoring Board. The Independent Monitoring Board is critical to providing assurance to the government that the services and treatment offered to the prisoners accord with the law and comply with human rights obligations. Mr. Speaker, the Independent Monitoring Board is a significant development and signals a desire by this government to hold public service providers to account. During 2019, 12 staff from the HMCIPS were engaged with development opportunities in the UK prison services. This included mental health training, working with children in custody, and attendance at HMPPS Leadership and Development Program. During 2019, members of the prison service delivered approximately 100,000 hours, yes, that's 100,000 hours of purposeful activity, which includes work, education, programs, community placements, and counseling. Mr. Speaker, it also extended delivery of addictions, mental health, sex offending, and general counseling sessions. It is anticipated that 70 to 75% of the counselor hours will be spent engaging in individual and group counseling sessions in 2020 and 2021. And Mr. Speaker, the prison service also continued delivery of a range of cognitive-related offending behavior programs and psychosocial activities. Mr. Speaker, we know that having a job is one of the factors that will help to support someone towards living a crime-free life. As such, the prison services has collaborated in the development of partnerships with UCCI and other organizations. These partnerships aim to furnish prisoners with increased personal capital and improve longer-term employability. And again, the goal of these partnerships and training and education provided is that it will result in industry-recognized qualifications in hospitality, plumbing, electrical, air conditioning, and carpenter trade skills for participating inmates. There's also been a partnership developed, and that will be rolled out in 2020 with City and Guilds, again using the auspices of UCCI. There will be City and Guild level qualifications earned by participating inmates who complete the program in areas such as air conditioning repair and installation, auto mechanics, barbering, electrical, plumbing, carpentry, catering and hospitality, farming and agriculture, and landscaping. Again, Mr. Speaker, these partnerships, which I have just discussed, will form the basis of the program of skills development, which is aimed to align with employer needs, especially those in the construction and trades industry. Mr. Speaker, an example of successful partnerships established since this unity government has taken office was in early 2019, where the prison service entered into a memorandum of understanding with the Department of Environmental Health to have a number of low-risk prisoners attached to garbage collection services. Mr. Speaker, thus far 10 prisoners have been placed on that program. This is an exceptional partnership between two arms of government focused on transforming lives, and I would like to thank the Minister of Health for his support in seeing this program come to fruition. Mr. Speaker, Her Majesty's Prison's contributions to the community has been visible in many instances, and during 2018-2019, they have included, but again not limited to, urgent repairs to the house of an elderly resident on behalf of the Department of Children and Family Services, cleaning and renovation of the Savannah, West Bay Heritage, and Scranton Parks, to name a few, beach cleanups in Northside, East End, and Bordentown, the manufacture and supply of a variety of furniture used at the Kaboom Music Festival, manufacture and supply of dog houses for the Customs Canine Division, and a bike repair project which the prison service receives and renovates lost, found, broken, and unclaimed bikes from the RCIPS before donating them to various community purposes. And looking forward, Mr. Speaker, for 2020-2021, HMCI will continue to participate in such community-based programs. And certainly, Mr. Speaker, as the representative for West Bay South, but in particular as a representative of the District of West Bay, the Director has been asked to put together and implement a feasible beach cleanup program to address the issues that exist at the Barkers Beach area, which we know are always prevalent with respect to the type and amount of garbage that washes up in those shores. So I will look to work with the Ministry to ensure that such a program is actually operationalized in the next coming year and years. In addition, Mr. Speaker, a number of key strategic developments will be progressed in 2020-2021, which will draw benefits across 4 key pipelines: security, environment, and offender outcomes. And so, Mr. Speaker, that is a brief overview of some of the amazing work that is being done to help transform the lives of our persons who are incarcerated and who are currently in the state where their freedom is curtailed, but trying to provide opportunities for them to be able to live more productive lives should and when they are set and out for release. And as Mr. Speaker, I will now provide an overview of the recent achievements and the work and future developments of the Department of Community Rehabilitation, which works very closely with the Cayman Islands Police Service in order to achieve the goals that we've just outlined. The Department of Community Rehabilitation also achieved significant results in 2019. A few of them include, Mr. Speaker, the Female Empowerment Program has continued to develop and strengthen. At the beginning of the year, Mr. Speaker, in 2019, the DCR had 35 females assigned to officers in the Female Empowerment Team. Mr. Speaker, by October 2019, 76 females are receiving gender-specific services from this team to meet their unique presenting needs. That expansion is an effort to try to reach as many women in the community that may need these services, and so the DCR has taken an active approach to trying to provide services in this regard. They've included workshops on specific topics offered to both the female prison and in the community, those who may be out in the community, including reintegration through employment. There's also interrelationship enhancement and awareness programs that have been offered to women in the prison, focusing on healthy relationships. There's also training programs that have been offered to the women's prison inmates on female anger management program in the community. It also happened in the community as well. The program has now been extended to persons in the community who are clients of the DCR. And a program manual has been rewritten to incorporate the changes, agents, and community supervision strategy in order to make a more cognitive behavioral therapy approach to anger management. And again, Mr. Speaker, as I spoke about this in the 2018-2019 budget, the intention of the department was to roll out an evidence-based strategy that seeks to target the criminal thinking and antisocial attitudes known as the changes approach of offenders from a cognitive behavioral approach in order to achieve positive behavioral change. So again, Mr. Speaker, the department is looking to train their own staff and has started a program of training the staff, and a second cohort of probation officers was trained in June 2019 of this year, leaving one final cohort to be trained in 2020, better equipping the probation officers to be able to help the offenders address and deal with the root causes, in many cases that being the psychosocial or the behavioral attitudes and the like. And so again, Mr. Speaker, in the coming year, the department will focus on providing data to show effectiveness of the new approach to supervision by the continuing rollout of the changes supervision strategy. It also looks to do renovations to the Cayman Brac office, which are necessary to improve the functionality and enhance safety of staff and clients in the sister islands. It also will look to acquire the necessary equipment to support the daily operations of the department, including additional vehicle to ensure that offenders in the community are supervised effectively. And I also want to add, Mr. Speaker, that with respect to the prison service, which I didn't mention earlier, they will be acquiring a specialized vehicle to ensure that when high-risk prisoners are on the move, either in transit to and from the court or elsewhere, that they are better secured and better looked after in the instances where they're off the prison compound, and that will be forthcoming in 2020 as well. And so the Department of Community Rehabilitation will also look to provide services for Spanish-speaking clients. As these numbers, the department is seeing a significant increase in these numbers throughout the year, and so to be able to provide services to all the clients that require the services of the department, they will look to do additional support in that respect. So, Mr. Speaker, as you can see, the government has tasked the ministry to simultaneously take a proactive and reactive stance to addressing the opportunities and challenges facing the Cayman Islands in relation to financial services and the economy, as well as helping to meet the safety and security needs of the people and the country as a whole. Throughout my presentation today, I hope that I was able to demonstrate that we have done and we will continue to do precisely that. But Mr. Speaker, before I wind up and close my contributions, it would be remiss of me not to briefly speak and wear the other hat that I wear. Not only am I Minister with responsibility for financial services and home affairs, I am, as you recognized on calling on me today, I am the representative for West Bay South. And certainly, whereas admittedly, Mr. Speaker, being the minister in charge of such a dynamic, such an engaging, such a important and full-on ministry as this, oftentimes I find I spend more of my actual time dealing with issues of national importance, but I am here to say to my people in West Bay South, especially my constituents who know that if they need to reach me, that I do keep those regular constituency office hours on Wednesdays when I'm not in the LA, that is, or not traveling on business for the country, that all that we do here as legislators, and this applies not just for me, but also all of my members of my front bench, as well as members in this honorable House, the work that we do on the national level does have a positive impact at the district level as well. And I'm fortunate in that a number of my constituents are either in financial services or have a nexus to financial services, so they may not see me in the constituency, but they see a lot of me and hear of and from me during the various engagements that we have, that I have with them throughout the year. But certainly for those members of the constituency that may not necessarily engage with me on those frequent occasions, they understand, and I look forward to continuing to host the regular office hours, the constituency meetings, and hearing and addressing some of the concerns. Mr. Speaker, some of the concerns that have been expressed that I'm happy to say that this unity government has been able to deliver on. And again, the lines are a bit blurred between West Bay South and West Bay as a whole, because again, Mr. Speaker, as you know, and my colleagues from West Bay know, West Bay is still a very special place, and in many respects, we are considered one district. So the improvements and achievements impact all in this regard in some respects. So the government earlier in the term delivered on the promise to provide the walking track at the Sir John Nakamba Primary School. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank the Minister of Sports for her support in continuing with this project to see that this project has actually come to fruition. And I can tell you, Mr. Speaker, in members of my own family alone, you can set your watch to it. They will be using that track at some time during the day on a regular basis, and I know that that track is long overdue and is well appreciated by members of the community. Again, Mr. Speaker, there have been, as you will see, you drive the streets, you'll drive down West Church Street, you'll drive on West Bay Road coming into by the fire service, you'll notice a number of crosswalks that have come up. And I want to thank the Minister of Planning and ask him that he will continue to work with me in this regard to provide crosswalks in the areas that may be required as needed, given the use of the pedestrianized aspects. And the Minister has assured me that the light at the by the Cemetery Beach will in fact be getting the blinking lights to ensure that there isn't any unintended accidents as a result of using that crosswalk without proper lighting and notification, and that the NRA will be completing that project in short order. Another project, Mr. Speaker, that sits in my constituency of West Bay South but impacts the entire district of West Bay, especially those who take to the sea on a regular basis or who like to enjoy the environment at Garvin Park, there on off of Badabanu Road. Mr. Speaker, as members and users of that park will notice and come to note that there has been additional playground and cabanas that have been built to create a more family-friendly environment. I again want to thank the Minister of Planning for helping to move that project forward in such an expeditious manner. But also, Mr. Speaker, I also want to acknowledge and recognize that one of the main requests that I get, and certainly the member from West Bay Central, as we speak about this often, is the need to enhance the dock and the boat launch ramp. And I would like to encourage, and I know that the Minister, both of Planning and Health, are on the case with respect to any requirements that may need to be brought to Cabinet to move that project forward, and I certainly thank them for their support and look forward to getting any updates that may be available during Finance Committee later on this, because we have some very keen people that need to have access to that boat launch. It is long overdue, Mr. Speaker, and this government, we are committed to addressing the needs of the community in that regard. Mr. Speaker,
Just to remind you, Honorable Minister, that you have 15 minutes left, and I hope you would utilize some of that time to talk about what happens in West Bay West as well.
Certainly. Certainly, Mr. Speaker. As I said, we are all individual constituency representatives, but West Bay is still a special place, and we are still one district. So I will ensure that I speak to some of the activities happening in other areas as well. But again, some of these initiatives are placed in West Bay South. Like I said, the West Bay Cemetery being the next one. We all know that people are literally dying to get in all throughout West Bay. And so we are moving, and I want to thank the Minister of Planning for trying to get that project off the ground. I also would urge the Minister of Health to continue to ensure. I realize that this is a project that is a dual project between planning and health from the Public Health Department, I guess, in terms of building the vaults, but this is a project that is absolutely critical. And as a government, we all, and as representatives, each one of us here from West Bay have been advocating for this. And I'm happy to see that we have made progress, we're making progress, and I would urge the relevant civil servants who are responsible for carrying out, their relevant statutory authorities, whomever is needed to carry this project through to fruition, do so with haste, because we literally cannot wait any longer, because we do have our loved ones to bury. And it seems that is happening as frequent as more and more frequent, as I would say. But nonetheless, Mr. Speaker, I'm happy to see that progress is being made in that regard, and I certainly will continue to do all I can on your behalf as Speaker, as well as working with my colleague, the member from West Bay Central, to see that we get progress on that. And finally, with respect to the national, or I would say the district-wide initiative, again, happens to be located in West Bay South, but the movement to develop and build the West Bay Police Station. Mr. Speaker, as you will see, there has been movement made, there has been the clearing of the land, but I do want to encourage, and I hope that the Chief of Police may be able to provide more information in that regard as to what the plan is in terms of moving that project forward to ensure that West Bay gets a fit-for-purpose police station that will benefit the residents of not just West Bay South, but the entire district of West Bay Central, West Bay North, as well as West Bay West. And Mr. Speaker, I've had the privilege of attending one of the two. I couldn't make the second because of competing obligations, but the district community amelioration efforts of developing the parks and public open spaces for our residents is something that we all in the community take very seriously. As I said, Garvin Park has certainly had some improvements. The two parks in West Bay West, that being the Leo Ebanks Park and the dual-named park of the Bosun Bay area, also Ebanks Park, the efforts certainly are being made to recognize that we need to provide safe environments for our children to play, safe environments for our elderly to gather, safe environments for the community to come together and enjoy and fellowship. And so a big part of the thrust of obviously myself as a member from West Bay South, but as each of us as representatives from the District of West Bay, are to try to create those environments for people to come together to fellowship. Mr. Speaker, I know you host your annual seniors, you along with your colleague, the member from West Bay Central, host the seniors community Christmas dinner on an annual basis. And now I see that it's being hosted at the Leo Ebanks Park. It seems like that has become the home for that event. I also, as I said, I'm happy and thankful to be able to, having 6 years running now, hosted the Old Time New Year Family Fun Day at the Ed Bush Field, which caters to the entire West Bay and even those who would like to be West Bayers for a day. We don't turn anybody away, and we've had tremendous support from yourself, Mr. Speaker, from the member from West Bay Central, from members of the Premier, as well as members from my colleagues who've come down to witness and see for yourself how amazing a district that West Bay is. And yes, I have to recognize that the members of the opposition that have come to see for themselves as well and to show support, because As much as they'd like to say about West Bay, Mr. Speaker, and forgive me for getting real local now. As I said, sometimes the best come from the West, but certainly we recognize everybody's contribution, and I am proud to continue to be a minister in this government, but certainly, first and foremost, a representative of the people of West Bay, and West Bay South in particular. But Mr. Speaker, I also, in closing, want to thank members of my committee who work with me to pull off the Old Time New Year Family Fun Day on an annual basis. It is all volunteers, Mr. Speaker. All volunteers that come out to give of their time freely. And there's really too many of them for me to mention by name at this stage, but they know who they are, and I'll be calling on you again, and the community knows and appreciates how much you do for them on your start of your new year. So thank you for everyone that comes out and supports that effort. I'd also like to thank members of the ministry team who, as I've indicated before, have worked tirelessly to ensure the government has delivered on the promises that we have made to address some of the concerns related to financial services and home affairs. I'd like to start with the Chief Officer, Dr. Dax Bazdeo, and the entire team at the ministry, all of the HODs, including Michelle Bahadur of the Department of Financial Services, Duncan Nicol of the Department of International Tax Corporation, Cindy Bulgen of General Registry, Julian Lewis of the Department of Public Safety and Communications, Lisa Malice of the Department of Community Rehabilitation, Danielle Coleman of HMCI, Steve Barrett of HMCIPS, and the Interim Fire Chief Paul Walker of the CIFS. I'd also like to thank the MDs of the statutory authorities, Cindy Scotland of SEMA and Marco Archer of CSX. And in particular, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank the staff of the Ministry's Department of Finance staff, headed by CFO Wendy Manzanares, and all the respective teams and personnel who have worked diligently and tirelessly to ensure that the Ministry has complied with the budget allocations received, and that the allocated funds in the most appropriate manner has been deployed to achieve the relevant policy objectives of the government and addressing the government priorities, which I would remind the people once again, the priorities being a strong economy to help families and businesses, a stable, effective, and accountable government, stronger communities, and support for the most vulnerable, ensuring Caymanians benefit from a healthy environment, and reducing crime and the fear of crime. All of those, Mr. Speaker, as I have indicated in my contribution today, the Ministry of Financial Services and Home Affairs cuts across all of those important priorities, and I want to thank all of those people who have worked and continue to work to ensure the government can stand here today and talk about the successes that we've had to date. There is more work to be done, but I hope that every member of this Honourable House, as well as everybody listening, can appreciate that we are committed, we're capable, we're competent, and we have done and will deliver and will continue to do the job that we've been tasked to do. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Does any other member wish to speak? Does any other member wish to speak? Does any other member wish to speak? The member for Georgetown West.
Check my shoes. Check my shoes. Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Speaker. It is with a sense of great satisfaction I rise to make my contribution to the throne speech, budget policy statement, and the budget address. Before I begin my contribution, Mr. Speaker, please allow me a few minutes to congratulate you on your historic achievement of representing your people as an elected member of government for over 35 continuous years, often as a minister or the leader. Mr. Speaker, I am not going to try and stand here and pretend like it has always been a bed of roses between you and I, but I can say in complete honesty that having sat in this seat for the past 2.5 years, I am in complete admiration of your achievement of 35 straight years. Because even 2.5 years has been very difficult at times and humbling. I take this opportunity to publicly congratulate you on this very historic achievement. And I appreciate all the encouragement and advice that I get from you. But Mr. Speaker, although I will never match your historic achievement, I will point out that I first voted in 1980 elections and then became intimately involved in Cayman politics from just before the 1984 elections when I openly campaigned for the Honorable Linford Pearson. From then I have not stopped working, campaigning, and being involved in some way with political campaigns over the years. I have supported and campaigned for some of Cayman's most successful and loved leaders, such as the Honorable Mr. Norman Borden, the Honorable Linford Pearson, and the Honorable D. Kurt Tibbetts, and it was especially good to see them at the opening. From the formation of the PPM in 2001-2002, I have worked closely with the Honorable D. Kurt Tibbetts, who I have learned so much from, and he is one of my biggest reasons I am in this honorable seat today. I say all this to say, Mr. Speaker, that over that time, when opposing leaders were arguing and fighting, not literally, for what they believed in, the overwhelming cry by the Cayman people has always been, why can't our leaders put aside their differences and work together for the betterment of Cayman? That is why, Mr. Speaker, I am so very proud to be a member of this unity government. At a time when it was most needed, the two opposing leaders did as the people were asking and put aside their differences to work together for the good of Cayman. Mr. Speaker, I know that you have not changed your beliefs. I know the Honorable Premier has not changed his beliefs, and I know that I have not changed my beliefs. But I do know that the two leaders have put aside their differences and are working together as the people wanted, and that is why, Mr. Speaker, I agree with your comment that this is the best governance we've had in your 35 years as an elected member. Mr. Speaker, I would like to take this opportunity to offer my condolences to the Honorable Premier and his family on the passing of Mr. McNee. I was recently sitting next to the Honorable Premier at another funeral when he remarked to me how strong the mother who was bearing her child was. I know that the Honorable Premier does not wear his feelings on his sleeve, but over the past few weeks, especially the last week, I have come to see how strong the Premier is and the deep love he has for Cayman. We who are close to him know how deeply he is affected by the passing of Mr. McNee. And we see that during this time of grieving, he is still determined to fulfill his commitments to the country he loves so much. I was at the funeral of Mr. McNee, and I thought the Premier was talking about our father, as he never did compliment us on our achievements. But his backhand slaps like there is still room for improvement. And oh, that wasn't too bad, was his way of showing us that he was extremely proud of us. And that's how Mr. McNee was with his children. A responsible and supportive budget from a responsible and supportive government. Delivering today's priorities, meeting tomorrow's challenges. Shortly after the Government of Unity was formed, of which I am honored to be a part, we started working on our 2-year budget. Extremely long days were spent putting the budget together. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank all the ministers, chief officers, and their staff, and caucus for the hard work and long hours put into both budgets. I cannot imagine how they managed when a budget had to be produced every year. Every minister wants what is best, first and foremost, for Cayman and the Cayman people, and secondly, what is best for their ministry. Over the last 2.5 years, I have witnessed each of them working hard to achieve these goals, and I have also seen the disappointment when some of the ministers have had to cut their own budget for the overall betterment of Cayman and the Cayman people. This being my first term in office, I have spent the last 2.5 years learning the ropes as a councillor for tourism, transport, and sports. Looking back over that time, I'm grateful for the incredible experiences, but mostly I'm grateful for the opportunity to serve my fellow Caymanians. Mr. Speaker, I still wake up at night thinking that I am dreaming. I always say that my greatest and proudest achievement before May 2017 was representing Cayman on the cricket field. But like that honor, it has come with ups and downs. In the past 2.5 years, I've had unforgettable experiences that I will never forget, but I've had some testing and disappointing times. I went into this political journey knowing that there would be good days and some days that would be a little less so. But what has inspired me and kept me going on those days when the sun shines a little less brightly is knowing that the work I am doing is improving the lives of Caymanians. I thank the constituents of Georgetown West for choosing me to represent them, and I try to show my gratitude by getting up every day with them on my mind. It is for them that I am pleased to support this budget and the plans the budget underpins, because it has been carefully designed by some of the smartest people I have ever known, and it will work to make the lives of every Caymanian better. Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Finance Minister has presented a healthy set of public accounts showing rising surplus and falling debt. This is the kind of budget that a responsible government can deliver when it's following a long-term economic plan that is working. And nowhere is the success of that plan more evident than in employment and job creation. This government has made significant progress in recent years to deliver more jobs. Unemployment is the lowest it has been in years, having fallen from 10.5% in 2013 to 4.8% where it is today. Mr. Speaker, this might just sound like numbers, but it feels different when you think that those numbers represent people we know, our family and our friends. As the Honorable Premier stated, there are 3,300 more Caymanians in employment than there were 6.5 years ago. That is a lot of people who are a whole lot happier and more prosperous now. I am proud of this government for delivering on that promise, and it looks like there is more of that to come. All of the key economic indicators show we're moving forward as a country. Our finances are in a good position. Our economy is growing. Growth matters because it means more jobs, higher incomes, and better opportunities for families to get ahead and enjoy all that life has to offer. Only a handful of developed economies enjoy such a positive outlook. Mr. Speaker, Caymanians rightly place a premium on a stable government. Under Premier Alden McLaughlin's strong leadership, this unity government is providing that stability. Mr. Speaker, in my personal opinion, Cayman could not have anyone who would be a better premier than the premier we have right now. Both locally and overseas, the premier represents the Cayman Islands and the Cayman people with pride, confidence, intelligence, and honor. Whenever I have the chance to listen to the Honorable Premier speak, especially in this honorable house, I am certain that the famous quote from Muhammad Ali, "Float like a butterfly and sting like a bee," was made for the Honorable Premier. He delivers his speech like he is in a boxing ring. He knows when to dance around the ring, he knows when to jab, and then he delivers the uppercut at the perfect time, which always lands. He should land it more often, though. Every Caymanian should be proud to have the Premier representing them. We are on the right track. We are making good progress, and we are looking ahead with confidence. Mr. Speaker, let's talk about how success has been achieved and what those successes are as they relate to my ministries. Mr. Speaker, I would like to thank the Minister for asking me and allowing me to be his Councillor for Tourism and Transport. In my 2.5 years as Councillor, I have learned so much that I did not know about tourism and the hard work and details that so many persons behind the scenes here in Cayman and in the Cayman tourism offices overseas have to put in to entice tourists to visit the Cayman Islands. Mr. Speaker, I have attended quite a few tourism conferences overseas, and every time, without fail, I observe the respect and deep admiration that prime ministers, premiers, and ministers from other islands and countries have for the deputy premier and our minister for tourism of the Cayman Islands. I have sat behind our tourism minister at heads of government forums and see other leaders looking for the nod of approval for what they have said from our Minister of Tourism. I have to admit on a personal note that I appreciate when the minister takes me along with him to these conferences, because at times I am made to feel very important because other leaders will approach me on a first name basis, asking me to please let our tourism know that they would like a word with him. And I would just like to emphasize, and I don't think it's a coincidence, that after being courted by all the tourism ministers and premiers and prime ministers of other countries for our tourism minister to be the chair of the Caribbean Tourism Organization, CTO, he politely refused, but his nominee was elected unopposed. I don't think that was a coincidence. The tourism industry is intensely competitive. There are countless options available to consumers who are looking for a warm weather vacation. This is especially true for consumers. This is especially true for consumers in the US, who represent our largest source market. Over generations, Caymanians have built a tourism industry that is the envy of the Caribbean. How do I know that we are envied? I hear how Cayman is the most sought after destination at all these forums, and all they want to do is get the formula from our minister. What else are our competitors looking for? We have a modern airport paid for out of cash. We have world-class attractions, but we also have something that cannot be replicated anywhere else. We have Caymankind. Mr. Speaker, thousands of Caymanians have made successful careers in tourism. Building this industry we are so proud of today. And it is our responsibility as a government to do everything in our power to ensure that this industry, one of the two main pillars of our economy, has a robust market to fuel it long into the future. This is what the proposed cruise berthing and cargo port facility does, and we will never get a deal like this again. The design is modern, is functional, and I have already discussed my position on these facilities during my debate on the referendum, so I will not go into detail here again, only to say I'm proud of the ministry's accomplishments with this project, and I'm looking forward to seeing it become a reality. Mr. Speaker, we have to decide as a country whether we want to be in the cruise industry or not. We are positioning the Cayman Islands as a luxury lifestyle brand, and the cruise visitors in this category are traveling on the latest, most modern ships, the larger vessels that are not feasibly able to use tenders to transport passengers. As with any business and country as a whole, we cannot move forward by standing still. Mr. Speaker, in 2017, as we know too well, parts of our region were devastated by hurricanes. A third of the region went offline. With this in mind, our Department of Tourism went on the offensive. The goal was not to profit from our neighbors' misfortunes, but rather to plan for what was an inevitable threat on the horizon. They recognized that our neighbors would soon be flooding the market with advertising campaigns featuring brand new hotels and amenities once they completed their road to recovery. If we wanted to maintain our record-breaking success in visitor arrivals, we needed to break the mold to captivate a new audience. It was vital that we break out of the sea of sameness. With this in mind, the Department of Tourism set about developing a campaign highlighting the Cayman Islands' luxury lifestyle brand while celebrating the uniqueness of our destination. They and their agency poured through research, talked to affluent travelers and travel agents to understand more about what it means to be a luxury brand in the context of travel. Through all of this research, they learned that the affluent consumer defines luxury differently when it comes to travel experiences. Consequently, our new marketing campaign called Dream in Cayman was developed to be strikingly different. And because it was based on consumer insight, it is virtually tailor-made to protect our visitation. Mr. Speaker, throughout this exercise, we learned that luxury-minded travelers want sophistication and a white tablecloth experience, but they also want to be the one-of-a-kind outdoor adventure as well. And the Cayman Islands, more than any other Caribbean nation, is able to offer the best of both of these worlds. With this in mind, our island's unexpected natural beauty and fashionable luxury were combined to form whimsical, dreamlike imagery. Our uniqueness was brought to the forefront, highlighting things like Peter the Blue Iguana at the Botanic Park and Stingray City, and it features local talent such as Salida Ebanks and Sarah McTaggart. I'm proud to say that Dream in Cayman launched in March 2019 across TV, radio, print, and digital. And since then, the Cayman Island has been at the forefront of the travel and trade scene like never before. Magazines such as Travel Plus Leisure, Food and Wine, and Condé Nast Traveler has positioned the Cayman Islands in the opening pages of their magazines, typically reserved for premium priced placements. And due to the visual strength of the campaign, magazines are choosing to lead with it. In marketing, just like in many areas of life, we sometimes have to be willing to take calculated risks in order to stay ahead. That's exactly what the Department of Tourism opted to do, to rise above the competitive landscape. I look forward to the ongoing success of this groundbreaking campaign that is doing so well at enticing people to learn more about us by bringing them to our shores. Mr. Speaker, tourism rarely presents a one-size-fits-all solution to every issue or challenge. Consequently, for the avoidance of doubt, I would like to make it abundantly clear that the strategy to emphasize our island's uniqueness for the Dream in Cayman campaign is not one that can be applied to cruise tourism. Why? Because in this instance, our uniqueness comes from being the only island in the Caribbean without a berthing facility. Rather than that being an attribute, it is a competitive disadvantage and represents a threat to our future sustainability of that sector of our tourism industry. Mr. Speaker, as much as I love working in tourism, I have to confess, and this will come as no surprise to anyone here, my true passion is sports. It is a great privilege to be able to assist the minister and share in the successes of Cayman's teams and athletes. I would like to thank the sports minister for having me as her counselor for sports. I've spent my whole life involved in sports and have either played or followed most types of sports, but it has only been since becoming counselor for this ministry that I have come to realize the dedication that every association has in trying to make their sport the best it can be. I have seen firsthand the love and interest the minister has for every type of sport, and every opportunity she attends these events. I am extremely proud to accompany her to these events, and her knowledge of sports is amazing. Mr. Speaker, I'm always honored to represent the minister at award ceremonies, and I deeply appreciate the encouragement the minister passes on to me. I was particularly honored to accompany the minister to the very successful Carifta 2019 Games. When we were awarded the Games, the minister promised Cayman and the government that she would do whatever was necessary for Cayman to show our best colors and to create the most successful games ever. After hearing praises from IAAF President Lord Coe, NACAC President Victor Lopez, and one of the founding members of Carifta, Sir Austin Seeley, three individuals on the global stage of athletics, on how well organized and successful these games were, I think the minister can safely say that she kept her promise. Seeing people, especially young people, strive so passionately to achieve their best at any sport really confirms to me that all this work and long hours are very worthwhile. Mr. Speaker, I would also like to congratulate CIFA and CIFA President Alfredo Whitaker on staging the Canada versus Cuba game this past September, and for organizing the highest ranked FIFA team to ever play in Cayman, the USA versus Cuba game tomorrow. USA is now ranked 23, but they were one time ranked 4th in the world in 2006, and they will be playing at the Truman Bodden Stadium tomorrow night against Cuba in the Nations Cup. Mr. Speaker, under the guidance of the minister, I have witnessed amazing achievements in Cayman sports. To name just a few, Cayman hosted the first stop in the 2019 NORCECA Beach Volleyball Continental Tour. In Gibraltar, the women's beach volleyball team won the bronze medal at the NatWest Island Games. After competing in the European Challenge in the Isle of Man in May 2019, the Cayman Islands netball team is now ranked 34th internationally, and it was proud to welcome the junior and the senior team back in October when they competed in the Battle of the Saints 2019 netball tournament in St. Martin, where the Cayman seniors team went undefeated and won the tournament. Our boys under 19 rugby team ranks 4th in the Rugby Americans North region. The national cricket team took part in the ICC Americas under 19 World Cup qualifiers, and at the International Jet Boats Association World Finals, Cayman's watercraft racing teams placed 6th and 10th in the novice roundabout class and 7th in the pro-am roundabout. And as Vijay Ramjeet says, close. He's very close. He's on his way to hopefully becoming a pro, and he performed well in the Bahamas in the last month, and we were all there to welcome him back in this proud achievement. In boxing, Brandy Barnes returned from Sweden with the gold medal in the Horodori Cup. 25 Cayman athletes competed in the 2019 Special Olympics in Abu Dhabi. Cayman earned a total of 26 medals, which were 11 gold, 7 silver, and 8 bronze. At the Island Games, 80 athletes represented Cayman and placed our country 8th overall in the medal standings, which consisted of 11 gold, 10 silver, and 9 bronze. Squash in particular did a clean sweep for gold medals in all doubles and mixed doubles games. In 2018, Cayman made history by hosting the Pan American Squash Championships with over 128 competitors from 18 countries. And in the 2019 Carifta Games, our swimmers won 56 medals, of which 11 were gold, 19 were silver, and 14 were bronze. We were 3rd in the total team medal count. Mr. Speaker, on a few personal achievements, I am proud to be a supporter of SciFec. I have worked with the director, Dolores Thompson, and Professor Jerry Ransomi. I believe these 2 courses can make a real difference in many people's lives. The courses offered at SciFec are vocational in nature, including hospitality, creative, media, ICT, health, and social care. SciFec is currently expanding the construction course by offering additional units in AC repair and electrical. They currently run 2 apprenticeships, one in conjunction with PWD, and one in water sports in conjunction with Red Sail Sports and GoPro. I have been privileged to have sponsored worthwhile causes such as school supplies for the Truth for Youth, and this is my 2nd year of sponsoring Ties for the Boys to Men program, and I thank Mr. Christopher Murray for allowing me to help him. I was also honored to second the private member's motion brought to this honorable House by the member from Prospect titled Motion to Set Standards on Vehicle Imports. The member from Prospect is the chairman, and I am proud to serve as deputy chairman on the Standards on Vehicle Imports and Transportation Committee, which seek to offer government recommendations on potential standards regarding the importation of vehicles into the Cayman Islands, as well as to make other specific recommendations which may improve the traffic congestion challenges. Work on the Anthony Drive resurfacing and drainage system will begin from December the 12th, 2019, and I would like to say a special thank you to the Minister for Commerce on all the work, and I know he must get tired of us calling him all the time, but I would like to thank him personally. At this time, Mr. Speaker, I would like to thank the member from Georgetown South for all the work she does with me, and it is a pleasure working with her and sharing our constituency offices together. Sometimes I know I give her a lot of problems, but I thank her for putting up with me. I would also like to thank the staff of both ministries, tourism and sports, especially Ventisha Connolly, Gina Matthews, Sue Ransom, and Joel Francis for all the help and knowledge they pass on to me. Mr. Speaker, in closing, I want it to be clearly known that my reason for standing in these hallowed halls today is to do my very best to provide people with the very best opportunities for the future and to make a positive impact on people's lives. This is why I spend so much time with young people in sports. And this is why I'm so passionate about this government's efforts to continue to build our tourism industry in both stayover and cruise. It is through this effort that we are securing livelihoods for Caymanians and their families today and tomorrow. I was raised, Mr. Speaker, to be honest and to be loyal. My father used to joke with Chris and I that we love Cayman more than we loved our family. Truthfully, often it feels so. And to steal a quote from the Premier, there are Caymanians who love Cayman as much as I do, but I guarantee there is no one, I repeat, no one that loves Cayman more than I do. That is why, Mr. Speaker, I stand before this honorable House today and provide my support for this government and for the incredible work it does every day to make the lives of all Caymanians better. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
We will take the luncheon break at this point, and we shall come back by 2:15. 2:15 sharp.